The distress call went out like a cry in the night. A small alien colony hidden on the edge of known space begged for help. Their voices carried through the stars. Please, someone answer. Our shields are failing. Our defenses are gone. We cannot survive alone. For days the signal repeated, again and again, and the galaxy heard it. Every empire, every council, every so-called protector, but no one came. The great powers of the stars held their silence. Some said the colony is too small, not worth the risk. Others whispered, it is too costly. We cannot waste fleets on weak worlds. And many simply turned away, pretending not to hear. The people of the colony watched their skies with dread. The enemy ships were closing in, dark shapes against the stars. Families huddled in underground shelters. Children cried in the cold tunnels. The last governor of the colony stood in the command hall, powerless, staring at the blinking distress beacon. No help would come. No one cared. For the galaxy, the colony was already dead. But as the final hours passed, something strange happened. The signal reached farther than anyone expected. Beyond the trade routes, beyond the old empires, beyond the civilized stars, it reached Earth. On Earth, the message was translated. It was simple. It was desperate. It was raw. We are dying. The galaxy has turned away. Please, someone, anyone, help us. And humanity listened. Humans had been told by the Galactic Council to stay silent, to stay in their corner. The galaxy thought of Earth as reckless, dangerous, too young, too violent to be trusted with power. The Council had forbidden Terrans from joining alliances. Most believed humanity would fade into the background of history. But humanity did not forget what it meant to be abandoned. They remembered their own dark times, and they would not turn away. A decision was made, quietly, quickly. Terran fleets stirred from hidden bases. Warships that had not moved in decades powered up their drives. Engines roared in the silence of space. Hulls of steel, dark and scarred, awakened from their long sleep. The order was simple. Prepare the Armada. Set course for the colony. Meanwhile, the colony prepared for death. Enemy fleets now filled their skies. Cruisers and destroyers moved into position. Orbital weapons burned as they tried to resist, but one by one they fell silent. The civilians gathered in the shelters whispered their last prayers. The governor closed his eyes and placed his hand on the beacon one last time. The final transmission went out. A broken, fading signal. If anyone can hear us, this is our last day. And then the beacon died. The enemy commander laughed. Victory was certain. The colony would burn. No one could save them now, or so he believed. Because far beyond the edge of the system, the stars rippled. A distortion spread across the void. Space itself seemed to shiver. The sensors of the enemy fleet lit up with warnings. Something was coming. Something massive, and then the first Terran ship arrived. It was not a single vessel. Not a small relief craft. Not a token defense. It was the Armada. Warships larger than cities. Carriers with wings of steel. Dreadnoughts armed with weapons that glowed like suns. Humanity had answered, and with them came fire. The galaxy had turned away. The Council had chosen silence. The empires had chosen cowardice, but Earth had chosen war. And in that moment, the fate of the colony and the fate of the galaxy began to change. The people who were abandoned were no longer alone. Hook ending. As the colony watched in shock, as the enemy fleet froze in fear, the Terran admiral gave only one order. For every world abandoned, for every life ignored, fire. And the stars lit up with the first shots of the unexpected war. The arrival of the Terran fleet was like a storm breaking across the stars. One moment, the enemy ships surrounded the helpless colony, preparing to strike. The next, reality itself seemed to twist. Space shimmered, and massive warships tore their way into the system. They were unlike anything the colony had ever seen. Some ships were as large as mountains, their armor black as night, scarred from old battles. Others were sleek and fast, like predators circling for the kill. And behind them, carriers opened like steel hives, releasing wings of fighters that swarmed forward like angry hornets. The civilians underground stared at the skies through old hollow screens. Children gasped. Adults wept in silence. The governor whispered the words no one believed he would ever speak. We are saved? The enemy commander was less certain. His sensors screamed as ship after ship appeared, dozens at first, then hundreds. The Terran Armada was larger than anything he had been told humanity possessed. The Council had declared Earth's fleets small and obsolete, but what he saw now was a force that could not be explained. He tried to hide his fear. Terrans are reckless savages, he told his officers. They think numbers will save them. Prepare to fire. Yet inside he knew the truth. This was no small rescue mission. This was a war fleet. The first Terran transmission came across the system. The voice was calm, deep, and merciless. To the hostile fleet, you have attacked the innocent. You have surrounded civilians. You ignored their pleas for mercy. You now face the Terran Armada. There will be no warning shots. There will be no retreat. Prepare yourselves. And then the channel went silent. The enemy laughed. Empty threats, the commander said. Their fleet is old. Fire on them. Burn them down before they form up. His fleet moved, launching missiles and plasma fire at the incoming Terran ships. The void lit up with deadly light. But the Terrans did not retreat. They advanced. Terran battleships absorbed the first barrage with their layered armor. Their shields shimmered blue, bending but not breaking. Then the Armada answered. The first Terran salvo came like thunder. Railguns fired slugs the size of buses, each moving faster than sound in vacuum. Missiles streaked from hidden silos, guided by swarms of drones. Beams of white-hot plasma cut across the black. The nearest enemy cruiser did not even have time to scream. One railgun round pierced its core, splitting it apart. Another vessel was swallowed by fire as a Terran missile detonated inside its engine banks. In seconds, ships that had once looked invincible were nothing but burning wreckage drifting into the void. The colony below shook as explosions lit the sky. Children cheered. Parents cried. The governor stood frozen, whispering, "They came. They really came." But it was only the beginning. The enemy commander shouted in panic. "Form up! Regroup! Their weapons are nothing but brute force. Outmaneuver them." His fleet tried to scatter, but Terran fighters were already swarming. Small, agile craft darted between the larger ships, tearing into engines and targeting systems. Enemy destroyers fell one by one as swarms of Terran drones overloaded their defenses. Still, the enemy was not finished. They brought reinforcements from the far side of the system, fresh warships rushing to join the battle. Dozens more ships appeared, and their combined firepower was enough to finally slow the Terran advance. The battle began to balance. For every enemy vessel destroyed, a Terran ship took heavy damage. The colony watched as 2 Terran cruisers fell silent, exploding under combined fire. Humanity was strong, but the enemy was countless. Inside the Terran flagship, Admiral Reyes stood over the holotable, his face carved from stone. He watched as red enemy markers filled the map. "More are coming," his officers warned. "If they bring their full fleet, we may not hold." Reyes narrowed his eyes. "We don't need to hold," he said. "We need to break them." He gave the order that would change everything. Release the second wave. Show them what Earth has built in the dark. And then the void shuddered again. Behind the first Armada, more Terran ships arrived. Not dozens, not hundreds, thousands, carriers the size of continents, siege ships with cannons that could shatter moons. The colony civilians watched in awe. The enemy watched in horror. And the galaxy, listening from afar, realized the truth. Humanity had been silent for too long. They had been underestimated, ignored, even mocked. But now, the Terran Armada was awake. Hook ending. The enemy commander felt his blood turn cold as the Terran admiral gave his final command. All ships, full assault, leave nothing standing. And in that instant, the war changed forever. The blackness of space became a storm of fire. The Terran Armada, now fully awake, moved as one living beast. Thousands of ships surged forward, their engines burning like blue suns. Weapons thundered in perfect rhythm, shaking the void itself. The enemy had expected hesitation. They had expected diplomacy, delay, or fear. Instead, they faced a force that wasted no time. The Terrans came to kill. From the surface of the colony, the people watched through trembling holoscreens as the skies lit up. Each blast looked like a second sunrise. Children pointed at the glowing streaks of Terran fighters rushing past the clouds. Parents held each other tightly, not sure if this was salvation or only the beginning of greater destruction. The governor whispered to himself, "If this is war, it is not like any I have seen before." In orbit, chaos reigned. Terran dreadnoughts plowed forward, their armor shrugging off enemy salvos that would have shattered other fleets. Every strike was answered with overwhelming force. A single Terran siege ship turned its massive cannon toward the enemy's flagship formation. Its gun roared, hurling a tungsten spear through the void. The projectile tore clean through one battleship, then punched a hole into another, both ships exploding in blinding silence. The enemy commander clenched his fists as two of his best ships vanished in seconds. This is impossible," he spat. "No fleet can fight like this. They are deathworlders, mindless savages. Break them." But his voice carried more fear than command. The enemy tried new tactics. Frigates swarmed in groups, striking at Terran carriers with hit-and-run attacks. Stealth ships uncloaked to launch torpedoes at the Armada's flanks. Cruisers dived into close range, desperate to punch through the Terran lines. And for a moment, it worked. A Terran carrier took heavy damage, its hull torn open, spilling fire into the void. A squadron of destroyers was ambushed by cloaked attackers vanishing in sudden bursts of light. The colony below gasped as Terran ships fell, proof that even this mighty armada was not untouchable, but humanity had not come unprepared. "Deploy the hunters," Admiral Reyes ordered. At his command, hundreds of smaller vessels emerged from hidden bays. Not ordinary ships, Terran hunter-killers, fast, ruthless, built for only one purpose, to tear apart the enemy at close range. They moved like wolves, circling prey. They cut through frigates, dismantled stealth ships, and drove the enemy cruisers into chaos. Every Terran loss was paid for 100-fold. Then came the boarding strikes. Terran dropships launched from the Armada, their armored hulls glowing red as they pierced through flak fire. Inside were Terran Marines, heavily armed, brutal, trained for war zones most species would never survive. The first dropship smashed into enemy cruisers, cutting through hulls like spears. Within minutes, screams filled enemy channels as Terran Marines tore through decks, leaving nothing alive. The galaxy had always whispered of Terran soldiers, creatures, who fought like demons, who killed with terrifying efficiency. Now those whispers became truth. On the colony, hope began to rise. People cheered, their tears no longer of despair but of awe. "Humans. They are fighting for us," one elder said, clutching a child close. "They fight like no others, as if every life here matters." But above, the battle was far from finished. The enemy fleet, though shaken, was vast. For every ship destroyed, reinforcements poured in from the far edge of the system. Numbers. Endless numbers. Admiral Reyes studied the map grimly. His armada fought with fury, but the enemy would keep coming. "We can win here," an officer said, "but not like this. They will bleed us until nothing is left." Reyes nodded slowly. His eyes turned cold. "Then it is time to remind the galaxy what Terrans build in the dark." He gave a single order: "Activate the Leviathans." And the void changed. From the shadows of space hidden beyond the system's edge, shapes began to move. Not ships, not carriers, not dreadnoughts. Something larger, something ancient. Colossal war machines, so massive they blocked the starlight as they emerged. Each was a moving fortress, bristling with weapons that glowed like suns. They had slept in silence for decades, unknown to the galaxy, hidden in secret Terran shipyards. Now they were awake. The first Leviathan's main gun charged, humming with power strong enough to shatter a moon. The colony watched in silence, breathless. The enemy commander, for the first time, felt terror. What are those?" he whispered. "Hook. Ending." The answer came as the first Leviathan fired. A single beam of white fire crossed the void, cutting through the enemy fleet like it was paper. Dozens of ships vanished in an instant, and Admiral Reyes's voice carried across every channel, cold and final. "This is only the beginning." The first shot from the Leviathan tore through the void like the wrath of a dying star. Dozens of enemy ships vanished. Their hulls ripped apart in silence, their flames scattering like sparks into the endless dark. The galaxy had heard whispers of Terran weapons, rumors, legends, but no one had truly believed. Now, the truth burned across the skies. Humanity had been building giants while the galaxy mocked them. The colony watched in awe. Children pointed at the enormous shapes that blotted out the starlight. Adults fell silent, some even kneeling as though the massive machines were gods. One child whispered, "Are those our protectors?" The governor answered, voice shaking, "No, those are Earth's monsters, and today they fight for us." The enemy commander could not breathe, his eyes fixed on the Titans filling his display, each larger than anything his fleet had ever faced. "Impossible," he muttered. No species should build such weapons." But the truth was before him. The Leviathans advanced. Each step across the void was marked by thunder. Their main cannons fired beams of light that split space itself. Missiles the size of towers launched in waves, guided by AIs that could outthink enemy defenses in seconds. Point defense systems lit the skies, shredding every incoming strike. The battle became slaughter. Enemy cruisers broke apart like toys. Carriers scattered their fighters into the void, but Terran drones swarmed them, hunting them down one by one. A dreadnought tried to ram a Leviathan, desperate to wound the monster. The giant ship barely flinched. Its hull groaned, then a plasma lance tore through the dreadnought, cutting it in two. Inside the enemy fleet, panic spread. "Fall back," some captains screamed. "Hold the line," others begged, but no line could hold against this. On the colony surface, the people wept. They had begged for help, and the galaxy had turned away. Yet now, Earth's Armada fought as if this small, forgotten world mattered more than all the stars. "They are not like the others," one elder whispered. "They fight, not for profit, not for glory, but because we were abandoned." Yet even with the Leviathans unleashed, the battle was not without cost. Enemy reinforcements poured into the system. Ship after ship jumped into orbit, filling the darkness with endless fire. The Armada fought back with fury, but even giants could bleed. One Leviathan shuddered as enemy battleships swarmed its flank. Its shields flickered, its armor cracked. Admiral Reyes watched grimly as the massive ship's hull split apart, scattering fire into the void. Thousands of Terran crew were lost in a single instant. The colony gasped. Hope flickered. The enemy commander grinned through his fear. "See?" he shouted. "Even their monsters can fall." But Reyes's face remained stone. "Signal all ships," he ordered. "We hold. We advance. Humanity does not turn back." And so they pressed forward. Terran Marines boarded ship after ship, dragging enemies from their halls, leaving silence in their wake. Terran fighters chased the enemy across the void, their engines burning white as they cut down every escape attempt. The Leviathans fired again and again, tearing fleets apart like paper, even as their own hulls bled fire. Every moment was brutal. Every strike was merciless. Every ship lost was answered with vengeance. The galaxy, listening from afar, was struck silent. On distant worlds, alien leaders watched the battle reports in disbelief. The council chambers fell quiet. The empires, that had turned away from the colony, now stared at the screens, horrified. This is not the humanity we thought we knew," one ambassador whispered. "They should not have this power." Another voice answered, trembling. "They always had it. We just chose not to see." The battle raged for hours. Enemy fleets crumbled. Reinforcements slowed. The Armada pushed deeper, closer to total victory. But the enemy commander had one last card to play. From the dark edge of the system, his true flagship appeared. Colossal, bristling with weapons, powered by a reactor stolen from ancient ruins. A ship of nightmares older than his empire, stronger than any vessel in his fleet. The colony shook as it emerged, casting a shadow across the stars. Its weapons charged, bright as suns, aimed directly at the colony below. The governor fell to his knees. The people screamed. The enemy commander laughed. Let the humans watch, he hissed. They cannot stop this. If we cannot take the colony, we will burn it to ash. Hook ending. On the Terran flagship, Admiral Reyes's jaw tightened as the monstrous enemy ship prepared to fire. He gave a single command, his voice cold as steel. All Leviathans, target that ship. Do not let it breathe. The colony held its breath. The galaxy held its breath. And the void prepared to witness a clash that would shake the stars themselves. The enemy super flagship loomed like a nightmare against the stars. It was older than empires, larger than moons, and armed with weapons forged from forgotten wars. Its hull glowed with ancient energy, each weapon brighter than a sun. The people on the colony trembled as its shadow spread across the skies. Its guns charged, glowing hotter, brighter, preparing to unleash death. One shot could end them. One shot could turn the colony into ash, the governor whispered, his voice breaking. Even the Terrans cannot stop that. But humanity had not come to watch a world burn. On the Terran flagship, Admiral Reyes stood still as stone. His officers looked to him, waiting, fearful. He raised his hand. Leviathans, he ordered, target the flagship. All batteries. All power. Break it. The Armada obeyed. The Titans of Earth turned their colossal guns toward the enemy behemoth. Cannons charged. Rails hummed. Plasma cores screamed. And then the void erupted. The first salvo slammed into the ancient ship, shaking its hull. But its shields flared, holding strong. It absorbed the fire, glowing brighter with every hit. The enemy commander laughed across the channel. Fools, you cannot kill a godship! Your armada will burn. The super flagship answered with fire. Its main gun released a beam of pure white light. The shot cut through space like a sword, striking a Terran cruiser. The ship didn't just explode, it was erased, turned into dust in an instant. Gasps filled the colony shelters as the light of the Terran vessel vanished forever. The battle turned desperate. Terran ships swarmed the ancient flagship, firing with everything they had. Dreadnoughts unloaded salvo after salvo. Fighters slashed at its flanks. Missiles streaked toward its engines. But still the monster advanced, its shields shimmering, its weapons burning. Another blast tore through a Terran battleship, splitting it apart. Thousands of Terran crew were lost in seconds. Admiral Reyes gritted his teeth. We cannot trade blows. We must cut deeper. He turned to his officers. Send in the Marines. Boarding pods launched from the Leviathans, streaking across the void like meteors. Inside, Terran Marines braced themselves, armored head to toe, weapons ready. They were about to storm a ship that had survived for centuries, maybe longer. The pod smashed into the super flagship's hull, drilling through layers of metal. Air hissed. Explosions followed. Then the Marines poured inside. The enemy never expected this. Terran soldiers tore through corridors, fighting room by room, hall by hall. They fought in zero gravity and fire-filled chambers in tunnels that twisted like mazes. Where other species would break, the Terrans pushed harder. They were from a death world forged in wars, built to survive where no one else could. The colony listened in silence as scattered transmissions came through. Sector breached. Engines under attack. Terran Marines advancing. Hope returned, burning brighter than before. But the enemy commander still smiled. He had prepared for this. The flagship's core was ancient, dangerous, unstable. If he could not win, he would destroy everything. His finger hovered over the command key. If I fall, he whispered, this world falls with me. Back on the Terran flagship, alarms screamed. Sensors picked up the spike of energy inside the enemy vessel. Reyes's eyes narrowed. He knew what it meant. They're going to overload the core, his officers warned. It will take the colony with it. The Admiral's voice cut through the panic cold and clear. Then we finish this now. The Leviathans roared. Every weapon, every cannon, every missile was unleashed at once. Beams of fire cut across the void. Missiles tore through space. Railguns screamed like thunder. The combined force slammed into the flagship's shields, breaking them at last. Armor split. Decks collapsed. The giant shuddered. Inside, Terran Marines fought their way to the core, cutting down defenders, breaching doors with charges. The enemy commander screamed as warning sirens echoed through his ship. The end was coming. On the colony, the people clung to each other, eyes fixed on the burning star above them. They didn't know if they would live or die. only that history itself was being written in fire. Hook ending. The Marines reached the core chamber. The Admiral's voice came through their comms. "You have one order. Shut it down or detonate it before they can." The Marines raised their weapons. The enemy raised theirs. The fate of the colony, and perhaps the galaxy, hung in that single burning chamber. And as the battle for the core began, the stars trembled. The core chamber shook like a dying star. Walls cracked, sparks rained down, and the heart of the ancient flagship pulsed with unstable light. It was a weapon, a reactor, and a bomb all in one, ready to consume everything. Terran Marines stormed inside. Their boots slammed against metal, rifles raised. Opposite them, alien soldiers stood in defense, eyes blazing with fanatic loyalty. Behind them, the enemy commander waited by the control console, one hand over the detonation key. "If you take one more step," he hissed, "I end us all." The Marines did not stop. Gunfire exploded. Blades clashed in close quarters. Grenades rolled across the floor, fire tearing through defenders. Humans fought like predators unleashed, fast, brutal, unstoppable. One Marine was hit, armor cracking, but he still crawled forward, dragging himself closer to the console. Another slammed an alien into the wall, crushing its skull against steel. The chamber became a storm of screams and smoke, and through it all, the commander's hand hovered closer to the detonator. "You cannot win," he shouted. "This ship was made by gods. It cannot fall to animals from a death world." But then his console flickered. A Terran Marine, bleeding but alive, connected a hacking module. Human code poured into the ancient system, rewriting, breaking, forcing control. The enemy commander's eyes widened. "What are you doing? That machine is older than your species, not older than our will," the Marine growled. Outside, the super flagship convulsed. Its shields were gone. Its weapons sputtered. The Leviathans kept hammering it with fire, carving holes into its spine, cracking its armor open. Colonists on the ground could see it now, giant plates breaking off, engines sputtering, the once invincible monster bleeding light. Cheers began to rise in the shelters. Hope was no longer a whisper, it was real. Inside the core chamber, the fight reached its peak. The last alien defenders fell. The floor ran slick with blood. Only the commander remained, standing at the detonator, trembling but smiling through broken teeth. "You may take this ship," he spat, "but you will never take victory." He slammed his hand down. The core roared, energy surging, light burning white-hot. The flagship began to overload, ready to tear itself apart, and with it the colony below. But the Terrans were faster. The hacking module completed its cycle. Human code seized the core, twisting the overload sequence. The energy didn't explode outward. It folded inward. On the colony, people shielded their eyes. The flagship's glow turned blinding, brighter than 1,000 suns. And then, silence. The ancient ship collapsed in on itself, folding like paper, its core consuming everything. It vanished, swallowed into a sphere of collapsing light. When the light cleared, only wreckage drifted in the void. The godship was gone. The galaxy's nightmare was dead. Cheers and cries erupted across the colony. Civilians wept, holding their families, falling to their knees in relief. The shelters echoed with one word: Terrans. Above, the human fleet held formation, scarred but alive. They had done what no empire dared. They had slain the unkillable. On the Terran flagship, Admiral Reyes stood in silence, watching the wreckage drift. His officers waited for him to speak. Finally, his voice cut through the bridge. "Transmit on every open channel." The comms officer hesitated. "Sir, to who?" "To everyone," Reyes said. "To the whole galaxy." The message was short. This colony called for help. "You all heard. None of you came." "Earth came." Earth answered. "Remember this. Humanity does not forget who we save, or who turns their back. The next time distress signals go unanswered, they will not fade into silence. They will echo with us." The words spread like fire across the stars. In the council halls, alien leaders sat in silence as the broadcast ended. Some were pale with fear. Others burned with shame. All of them knew one truth. The galaxy had ignored the colony. But humanity had not. And now every empire understood that Earth was no longer a quiet, primitive world. It was a power that answered distress calls with fire, steel, and blood. Back on the colony, survivors emerged into the daylight. They stared at the Terran fleet above, shining like guardians against the stars. Children pointed at the ships with wonder. Elders whispered prayers of thanks. One young alien girl looked at her father and asked, "Who are they?" The father swallowed hard. "They are humans," he said softly. "And the galaxy will never be the same again." Hook for next arc. Epilogue. But even as wreckage drifted in space, deep sensors across the galaxy awoke. The destruction of the god ship had sent a signal, a beacon, something older, darker, and far greater, had just heard humanity's name, and it was coming.